Hello, everyone. Welcome to the first session of business analysis. Now, I hope you would have seen few of the videos that we have posted in valuation series and financial analysis series. Similarly, in business analysis series, our main perspective is to go deep down into a lot of topics that can help you become an independent researcher. Now, you would be like, why another series? There is so much material available in investor letters, YouTube videos, a lot of forums and blogs in the market. But the main issue that we find with a lot of content is practically no one is digging deep. It's very easy to hear someone's point of view on a particular business, on a particular industry. It's very easy actually to see how he has analyzed that data point at a particular point of time. But it has been very difficult to then learn from that mindset and then apply on our own. So what we have done in the business analysis series is we have actually picked up various topics that we think are very relevant as frameworks for an individual student who wants to enter into capital market or any investor who is not from hardcore finance background. And we have covered every angle around it. The main problem with investment philosophies and investment rules in market is no one knows the exceptions. A thing can be right in a particular scenario and the same thing can be wrong in another scenario. So we have tried to cover every topic very holistically. And as we always have said, if you have any doubts while watching our video, feel free to put your doubts in the comment section. Like, we answer every doubt to our students. We consider you who is watching the video right now also as our student, and we will do every effort to solve your doubt. All right. And as stated in all the videos, if you want to read in a textual format what we're trying to communicate in the video, you can obviously go to our website financialsharkclasses.com, and you can go under the forum tab. I hope you all are seeing our screen here. You can go to the forum tab here, and you can then start reading the blogs. The business analysis blogs would be available under business analysis tab. All right. So with that basic thing out of the picture, I think we can now go ahead and start with topic number one. So the first topic that we will be talking about is what is actually defined as a good business. Everywhere consistently, I know you must have learned that we should only buy good businesses, right? We should never buy bad business. पैसा अच्छा business खरीद के ही बनता है. But it's rare to meet people who have read such lines and actually know the indicators of a good business. Now, see, there are a lot of indicators of a good investment. There is a momentum in the industry, for example, some kind of, turnaround in the business is happening, a loss-making company becoming a profit-making company. But I am not talking about catalyst of a good investment. The main point of this blog is mainly to talk about the qualities of a existing great business. A good business and good investment are different things. A good business is something that we need to understand right now, right? Which has generated good returns with growth over a long period of time. It sounds very simple, but let's go in depth, right? So before you go and try to understand the idea for us around this topic actually came from one of the quotes, that was presented by Mr. Charlie Munger of Berkshire Hathaway, that investors practically should fish where the fishes are. Okay. What he actually meant by this was the world of business is not a rational world. The profit and returns of businesses are clustered. That simply means some set of businesses keep on making high profits for a very long period of time, whereas some section of businesses have been loss making perpetually as far as you can go, past 10, 15 years. Even if they generate profitability, that is a cyclical profitability that comes for a year or two and it gets wiped off equally fast. So Chandni Mangal directed that when you are young, you are fresh, right? And you are not working under a very senior mentor who can teach you end-to-end exits very quickly. It's better to stick to businesses which have, proven business model. So we thought that let's run an exercise and, try to understand what are those great businesses in India and the mindset around how to define great businesses. Although a simple topic, yet not understood with, complete clarity uh, uh, when we meet a lot of people. So these are the two simple traits. See, if you are a businessman, if you're an entrepreneur, what do you desire? Two most important things. It's plain simple that you can grow as fast as possible. You can take your top line from 1 crore to 10 crore to 100 crore to 1000 crore as quickly as possible. And if you have invested certain capital in your business in the format of debt or equity, you want to generate the highest possible return on the same. Everything in business, I mean everything in business, from hiring great people to building a great product to focusing on great technological innovation, everything in business revolves around these two parameters. You want to grow fast and you want to make the maximum possible return on your capital. So let's invert it now. A great business should have what you desire as an entrepreneur, right? That is, the business should have a powerful track record of good returns on capital. And second, the business should have a long runway of growth. By long runway of growth, we mean a business should have the ability to keep on growing at a good rate for a long period of time. Now, a lot of gyan has been spoken by me here, right? Good return on capital. So how do we define good? Is 5% good, 10% good, 20% good, 100% good? And what do you mean by return on capital? There are various terminologies that you guys come across in academics, right? Return on equity, return on capital employed, return on invested capital, return on incrementally invested capital, return on assets. There are various terms used for return on capital broadly. Which kind of metric we are talking about? So we'll discuss that in detail, that what is called good and which return metric out of the above is actually the most reasonable metric to track to define a good or a bad business. And second, the trait that we have written here, long runway of growth. Now this is a futuristic term कि फ्यूचर में बिजनेस ग्रो कर सकता है क्या बहुत हाई रेट पे, बट फॉर टाइम बीइंग वी आर टॉकिंग अबाउट हिस्टोरिकल ग्रोथ रेट, and we are assuming it's a very wrong but a sensible assumption to build due to something called as Linde effect. I think this was quoted by Nassim Nicholas Taleb in one of his book, that if a thing has survived for a very long period of time and has actually performed well for a very long period of time, it has odds in its favor to keep on performing well for the future too. So through that concept, we have tried to assume here that the historically good businesses may be good businesses for future also. And we know this assumption has a lot of flaw, because otherwise great businesses of past should have never gone bankrupt, and the bankrupt companies should not have ever become great, like how Symphony became great after coming out of bankruptcy scenario around 2007 or 8, or how even big companies, you can talk about DLFs, right? You can talk about Unitex, right? They came down the curve very quickly. So we know there are exceptions. Great businesses become bad businesses become good businesses. But we will talk about this particular exception in depth when we talk about in later videos how to calculate opportunity size. But for time being, we are assuming if we are able to understand which businesses have been good historically, lot of them would still remain good in the future also. All right, that is a very key assumption that you should keep in your mind. So now let's talk about the elephant in the room. Okay, what is called good historical growth rate? एक बिजनेस के कितने परसेंट पे हिस्टोरिकली ग्रो होना चाहिए? क्या बोलो कि यस यार, दिस इज कॉल्ड अ गुड ग्रोथ रेट. सो व्हाट इज अ गुड जी? सेकंड, व्हाट इज अ गुड रिटर्न? एंड थर्ड, which return metric to track? So these are the three key questions that we'll answer in this video. Okay, so let's start with what is good. And this good depends from country to country that you are investing in. Okay, although Mr. Buffett and a lot of great investors, I think even Nick Sleep has this particular phenomena that a good return depends from an individual to individual. For example, if you're talking about someone who is into late 70s, okay, and who has majority of his capital parked in fixed deposits, earning 6% per annum. Now, there are two traits here. The guy cannot take huge risk because most probably that would be his pension money. So he would require a lot of safety there. And second point is his opportunity cost of capital, where he has already parked this money, is 6%. So if I combine both the point that he won't be able to take more risk, and anything which is over and above 6% would satisfy him, because when he shifts his money from an FD to another investment asset class, right, he would obviously want more returns than what he was earning right now. That is 6%. So let's imagine a good, reasonable debt fund offering 7.5%, 8% today might be a great return for him. But if you come and talk to a businessman, an entrepreneur who has, let's say, his 100% net worth into one or two businesses, and those businesses are giving him a return of 18 to 20% per annum. If you go and talk to him that you can own 10, 11%, 8% in a debt fund, it would be a very, very bad return for him. Because he would be like, मैं अपने business में और पैसा ना लगा दूं. I am able to own 18 to 20% there. So, that's the point. The return that is defined as good depends from investor to investor, depends from an individual to individual. But keeping that point aside, if we want to actually narrow down to one objective indicator, we believe that this number should be 12.5% or higher. Now, we are not astrologers and we are not physicists. We are not mathematicians. So how did we narrow down to this precise number called 12.5%, right? कि ये लॉजिक आप कहां से लाए कि एक बिजनेस का अच्छा रिटर्न तब माना जाता है जब वो 12.5% से अबव कमा पाता है. So if you can see our screen here, okay, I would just roll down from this title, understanding cost of capital, from this point till this point, the logic behind 12.5%, okay, till here, Nifty rolling return, till this point. Actually, we have explained this logic. How did we derive at 12.5%? For you guys, I will summarize it very quickly. So let's go into that mindset that we are an entrepreneur and we are taking risk of doing a particular business, okay? And obviously businesses are volatile. There is a lot of uncertainty. What if I give you an alternative? And that alternative is a basket of 50 biggest businesses of India. So it will provide you diversification. That if 5 or 10 businesses fail, the remaining 40 will still survive. And you can buy that basket with abundant liquidity. You will be able to sell it at any point of time you want. You will be able to buy it at any point of time you want, right? If that basket over a very long period of time in the past has provided a return of 12 to 12.5% after taxes, why will, in a rational mindset, you would want your business to generate a lower return than that percentage? Because that return is coming with diversification also. And your business might be a very small business. Here you are getting 50 well-established businesses of India. any rational guy would be very dissatisfied if he's owning 12.5% and low returns, because he can easily obtain at least 12.5 by being into a less riskier, more diversified investment asset called Nifty. The thing I was talking about is Nifty 50. Historically, Nifty 50 has provided 12 to 20.5% return in a 10-year time frame. That is a 12.5% compound annual growth rate. Now, this number has not been derived out of the blue. Okay, so we have also uploaded an Excel here. Please see the Excel here. We have uploaded the Excel here. I have just downloaded that for you. And let's go and see that Excel, how the number we have derived. So I hope you are able to see the Excel here. Okay, just let me close annotation. All right, so see here. So first year, what we did, we collected the past closing values of Nifty. It's available on NSE India, our website. Okay, every year at the closure of the financial year, right, that is March of every year, at what values has Nifty closed at. So the last trading day for the financial year 1996 was 29th March 1996, and Nifty closed at 985. You can see the data here. The last trading day for financial year 97 was 31st March 1997, and Nifty closed at 968. So we have broadly taken this closing values of Nifty. Okay, till the date we have them available. I think we did this exercise around, I think 1.5 years back. Yeah, so we have number till 31st March 2021. Okay, so we have taken up this closing values and calculated something called as rolling return. Now, what is a rolling return? Rolling return is something that picks up a block period. For example, if I talk about this column, see column number D here. What is a 3-year rolling period? So in this 3-year rolling period, we assume that if we enter in Nifty, right, in 1996, that is 29th March 1996, we will hold that Nifty for 3 years. That is 1997, 1998, and 1999. So if I buy something at 1996, I sell it at 1999. Similarly, I may end up buying in 1997 also. So the 3-year block of 1997 will end at 1998, 1999, 2000. So this is the second 3-year period. Similarly, from 1998 to 2021 will be the third block. So this is a 3-year rolling return. One 3-year period, second 3-year period, third 3-year period. And we just bring 1 year down. Simple as that. Now, when we are talking about a 5-year rolling period, the concept remains the same. The only thing that changes is we go from a 3-year block to a 5-year block. For example, if we buy Nifty index in 1996, 5 years will end when? 1997, 98, 99, 2000, 2001. That is why the first 5-year return you see here is in 2001, after the 5th year end. But what if we buy in 1997? The 5-year will end in March 2002. That is why the next 5-year block you see here is again 3.1. So this is called a 5-year rolling period. Now, you can calculate by Nifty closing value yearly returns to 3-year rolling return to 5-year, 7-year, 10-year, 15. You can pick your time frame. We generally want to talk about 7, 10, and 15-year time frame. And why we have taken time, this time frame, because we have not taken that time frame that you need to buy and hold, you need to be long term. That's according to us completely wrong. Not every investment is held for 7, 10, 15 years. In fact, a lot of investments are held with a 1 or 2 year time frame perspective. But because we are comparing here business and investing, it's rare to meet an entrepreneur who has started the business with a 2-3 year time frame. Every promoter, when he starts his business, at least has greater than 5 year of time period as a time frame to build his business, develop his product, build that consumer mindset, obtain that penetration. So that is the reason we have taken anything that is greater than 5 years as our comparable horizon of business versus investing. 5, 7, 10, 15. You can talk about any horizon out of the following. So let's pick 7 or 10 years, which comes into middle. Okay. So if we talk about the 7-year rolling return in India, so look at all the 7-year period. I would just scroll down the screen a bit. So we are at column number F. Okay, just remember that. Okay. So let's look at all the horizons here. The first 7-year period starts from 1996 and ends at 2003. The second 7-year period starts from 1997 and ends in 2004. Now, a lot of variations come into the 7-year block period. In one 7-year block, as you see, but just imagine plight of an investor who bought Nifty in 1996 and held it for 7 years in a row till 2003. What return did he make? It's absolutely 0%. Nifty was dot to dot in the same range in a 7-year period, although in between the dot-com bubble game, the crash came, but dot to dot 0% return. But look at the return that one investor generated who may have entered Nifty in 1997 and held for 7 years till 2004. He would have made 9% CAGR. But the guy who entered the market in 1999, okay, would have sold in March 2006, he would have made a CAGR of 17.8%. So now, if I talk about Nifty 7 years में कितना return देता है, what will you answer? 0%, 9%, 17%. In fact, there are different return in all 7-year block here, right? So you cannot pick up one number कि Nifty इतना return देता है. That is why just to derive, one particular metric, what is the right approach to do is you can either take average of every 7-year block, because practically you don't know कि आपके हाथ कौन सा वाला block लगेगा. Will you end up making 24% or you will end up making 13%? We can obviously debate on the starting price to earning multiples to understand when to allocate more, when to allocate less, but that will come under valuations topic. But for business analysis, broadly speaking, if you look at average of every 7-year block, right? So there would be approximately 13, 14, 7-year returns here of different blocks. The average return is coming out to be 12%. Now, for people who have problems with average, that average get affected by out. Yeah, guys, I think that there was a internet glitch. Yes, we were at this junction that the averages get skewed by outliers, and there can be lower return or higher returns than the average. But while building your expectations, you have no other option but to work around medians or averages. So even the median is 12%, even the average is 12%. Now you can pick up this number. So if you buy Nifty, let's say in 2022, today it's 28th Feb 2022, and if you plan to hold it for 7 years, right? What should be your expectation? It should hover somewhere around 12%. Now, as per Nifty's website, the historical dividend yield on Nifty has been approximately 1%. So add that because you will get dividends too. So broadly a return of 13%. But when you will sell it, you will come under a long-term capital gain tax, let's assume that that will remain at 10%. So 10% of 13%, that is 1.3% will go out of the window as taxes. You will remain with something around 11.7 or 12-ish%. Now, if you want to increase your time frame to 10 years, I will hold for 10 years. Nothing magically changes there. The expectation goes from 12 to 13%. If you want to hold for 15 years, the median and average of various 15-year block, that is the various 15 rolling returns, comes down to again 13%. If you want to go to a shorter time frame of 5 years, it again boils down somewhere around 11 to 12%. Now that's my logic. If you are willing to hold Nifty for 5, 7, 10, 15 years, your return expectation should somewhere be around 11 to 13% compound annual growth rate, including dividend after taxes. So that is why we took this number of 12 to 12.5% as a reasonable benchmark to beat while you are running your own business. So this is what we called as good return. Anything which is above 12.5% can be termed as reasonably good, because that would be higher than the opportunity cost of your equity capital, because you could have easily made 12.5% by buying Nifty. Although we understand few arguments against this topic too, जैसे 1996 से लेके 2001-3 तक इंडेक्स में इतना लिक्विडिटी नहीं था. So let's imagine मैं 10,000 crore का बिजनेस करना चाहता हूँ, तो मैं इतना सारा पैसा निफ्टी में कैसे डाल देता? It's okay. We understand those points, but I hope you are able to understand the real intention, right, behind coming down at this 12.5%. So the first question, remember we had to answer 3 critical questions. The first one was कि good किसको बोलते हैं? That was our first question, right? Remember here, a good business is something which generates good returns of capital. So what is called good return? Anything greater than 12.5% is called good. The second question was which return? So we like to broadly talk about return on capital employed as the right metric to understand business kitna return de raha hai. We are in the favor of return on invested capital too, but we are keeping the differences between ROE versus ROC versus ROIC aside. That is a topic for next video, because it itself is a extensive topic of around 30-40 minutes to understand with numerical examples. Broadly, we consider ROC as a right metric as compared to return on equity. Why? This is standard academics. Everyone of you should know that return on equity gets amplified or it gets increased by usage of leverage. Correct? If I can show you a simple example of how is return on equity calculated, I think we can go to this Tijorika screen. All right, so this is Steel Authority of India. Look at the return on equity of Steel Authority of India. It has ranged anywhere between 9 to in fact negative to again 9%. So broadly, ROE has been around 8-9% of sale. Now understand from where this 8 or 9% is coming from. We are using just the DuPont formula of ROE here. That is net profit margin into asset turnover into leverage. The synonym for leverage is also equity multiplier. So the margins has been somewhere around 4 to 5% over a long range. The asset turnover are less than 1. It is a huge asset, highly asset intensive business, a steel manufacturing. On 1 rupee of asset, fixed asset, broadly half or 0.6 revenue is coming. So that's called very asset intensive business. So broadly speaking, अगर Steel Authority of India बिना leverage के काम करता, तो Steel Authority of India का return on equity क्या होता? It would have been, let's say for the year, I think this is 2010, if I'm not wrong, the column, 7.7% return on, net profit margin multiplied by asset turnover of 0.6. Broadly speaking, approximately 4.5% return ka business hota hai, 4.5%, where I think at that point of time, your FD would have provided you 8%. But look at the leverage here. On 1 rupee of assets, everyone should know the formula of equity multiplier. That is nothing but simply assets of company divided by equity. So this company, if SAIL has 1.95 rupees of asset, out of that only 1 rupee has been funded by equity. That is why twice the leverage. Okay. That's how people decode it. But practically debt by equity would come out to be 1. Okay, 1 by 1, because if 1.95 ka asset hai, 1 ka equity hai, that broadly means asset minus equity. Approximately 1 rupees ka hi company ke upar debt hai. So debt by equity ratio will become what? 1 rupee ka debt divided by 1 rupee ka equity. So wo multiply 2 dikhta hai, but actually mein debt by equity to 1 ka hi hua. So basically when this 4.25 gets multiplied by 2 approximately here, the ROE still turns out to be a decent 9%. So see, the usage of leverage increases ROE. Okay, now obviously it is a double whammy. When your ROEs would be negative, it would increase that too. So imagine if your net profit margin is minus 5%, your asset turnover is 1. Practically speaking, your ROE was coming out to be minus 5, but you had equity multiplier of 2. That will take your return on equity to minus 10. See, same thing that has happened with SAIL here. Look here. A negative 10% net profit margin multiplied by approximately 0.4 of asset turnover would have left to approximately minus 4 ka ROE, but that went to minus 11 ka ROE. Okay. So leverage affects ROE, and leverage is not speaking about operating a business. It is capital structure decision. Now, in some businesses, we know that taking capital structure decision is not in promoter's hand. वो business किया ही उधार पे जाता है. A lot of mining businesses or commodity businesses itself, like Steel Authority of India or a banking business, they are practically done because you can take leverage. अगर आप leverage नहीं लोगे तो वो business करने का तो आपको sense ही समझ में नहीं आएगा. So we know ऐसे business के लिए you should still track ROE. I know it gets amplified by leverage, but the point is everyone who is doing or analyzing this business should know that one of the main logic of doing this business is आप leverage ले सकते हैं business के अंदर to grow. और अगर आप leverage नहीं लेंगे तो आप कभी इतने heavy capex कर ही नहीं पाएंगे. So you can still track ROE there. That's okay. We are perfectly fine with it. Generally speaking, for every other kind of business, which doesn't have a lot of tendency to work on leverage, right? For them, I think ROC is a right metric to use, right? Because it doesn't get affected by capital structure, because ROC is practically nothing but, we'll come on to our forum, it is NOPAT, net operating profit after taxes, divided by capital employed. NOPAT simply means earning before interest and tax into 1 minus effective tax rate divided by debt plus equity. Okay. Effective tax rate is practically calculated as profit before taxes in the denominator, and numerator you have income tax expense. This number is obtained from profit and loss statement of the company. This number is again obtained from profit and loss statement of the company. Okay. This number, EBIT, is again obtained from profit and loss statement of a company. This both number, debt and equity, these are obtained from balance sheet of the company. And again, to be explicit, what do we mean by debt? Debt includes long-term debt. It includes short-term debt. It includes current portion of long-term debt that you will generally find in other current liability section of an annual report. All right. And after Ind AS 116 that has come into application under new Ind AS accounting standards, you also include lease liabilities as debt. So all this thing added will come into debt. Okay. All right, we are not taking into account payables as debt because those are non-interest bearing liabilities. In some industries, though, like consumer electricals, there are something called as acceptances that come under current liabilities, right? Although those are interest bearing, but a lot of companies classify them as trade payables, which is a bit ironical because interest paying liabilities cannot be trade payables, but it arises due to operating cycle of the business in consumer electricals. They club it with trade payables. It's okay. You can either include acceptances in debt, you can exclude them, depends on an individual choice, should not make that big of a difference here. So ROC is the right return metric to track. So if I complete the first point, the first characteristic of a good business will be what, guys? ROCE, return on capital employed, greater than 12.5%. Now, this number was also after taxes. Remember, add dividend less LTCG. And this number is also after taxes. This both are comparable. So objectively speaking, any business which has ROC of greater than 12.5% seems reasonable. Now, as I already spoke, in some businesses, you can actually take ROE too. That's perfectly fine. All right. And yes, we also understand that there are concepts called as, weighted average cost of capital. Why we have only taken cost of equity. We can also take, WACC, weighted average cost of capital. We can fine tune on every aspect you want. But, this is our first video of the series. We again, like valuation series and financial analysis series, we will conduct 50 to 100 lectures on every domain here. So just wait, we'll try to cover everything over a period of time. So this is the broad thesis still here. Even the Excel has been uploaded. You can download it and play around with it if you want. This section of the block, we were talking about this logic of ROE versus ROC, when to take what, and the broad difference between both. Okay. Now the part is the growth part. Okay, the growth part. So again, what is defined as good growth rate? And first of all, by growth rate, we are talking about revenue growth rate, not about profit growth rate, because in profit, we have already covered the ROCE part. We want to talk about the scalability of a company. That is the revenue growth rate. Now imagine there's a company which has a top line revenue of $2.5 trillion. $2.5 trillion we are talking about. And that company itself is able to grow its top line at 6.5–7%. So it's very difficult to grow at such a huge value. 100 रुपए का 200 रुपए करना आसान है बॉस, 100 करोड़ का 200 करोड़ करना, although 100% growth rate ही होता है, you know how difficult that is, right? To multiply and grow at a higher base is very difficult. But imagine there is a company with $2.5 trillion of top line growing at 7%. And you are analyzing a company or an industry which has a size of 1,000 crore, 5,000 crore, 10,000 crore, which is such a small base as compared to $2.5 trillion. Right? If this would be $2.5 trillion, this would be 5,000, 10,000 crore. If such a huge base is able to grow at 7%, 6% per annum, would you want a company with such small top line to be able to at least grow? I'm using the word at least grow at 10% per annum, just 3% more, right? That is why, we have come up with this random number of, 10, 11, 12% of growth rate. Even if you cut down 10, at any scenario, it should be at least equal to 7–8%. And this company that we're talking about with $2.5 trillion, this company is nothing but our country called India. India is a $2.5 trillion economy, which is growing at 6.5–7%. Sometimes, in fact, greater than that. But on an average, you can, pick up 7, 6.5 as number. So if India as a country can grow at such a huge base at 6.5–7%, I think a company with a top line of 100 crore, 1,000 crore should definitely clock a growth rate of, at least 7 to 8% or higher, at least 10%, I would say, in my terms. That's a rough benchmark. So again, which is called a good growth rate? A growth rate which is greater than or equal to 10% can be justified as good growth rate. So what is a good business? Let's summarize it. A good business is one which has historically, for a very long period of time, and I mean at least 10 years historically, has generated a return on capital employed of greater than 12.5% and simultaneously maintained the growth rate of at least 10% and above. So sales CAGR of greater than or equal to 10% and not or, combined with a return on capital employed, average return on capital employed, which is greater than or equal to 12.5%. जिस भी बिजनेस के अंदर ये दोनों कैरेक्टरिस्टिक कॉमन है फॉर अ वेरी लॉन्ग पीरियड ऑफ टाइम, लेट्स से पास्ट 10 years and above, कंपनी मेंटेन कर पाई है, that broadly speaking you can at least term as a good business. Obviously, remember the caveat that I told in the initial few minutes of the session. Here we are assuming जो पास्ट में ग्रेट है वो फ्यूचर में भी रहेगा, मतलब ये कंपनी फ्यूचर में भी सेल्स ग्रो कर पाएगी और रिटर्न मेंटेन कर पाएगी, because we are standing today at point zero. We are taking cues from the history, but in order to communicate this business is a good business today, it should be good in the future also, na? For the coming 5-10 years. So we are assuming here the past will be equal to the future. Okay. Now, a lot of people would think that we are going into being proponent of quality investing or some sort of indexing. कि एक basket बनाओ, quality companies का खरीद लो. Boss, we are far away from that. We actually don't have any investment philosophy as such. Quality, growth, value, momentum, index, active, passive are just, according to us, few of the English terms that people have used: left, right, center, statistical investing, arbitrage, special situations. In the end, the crux is make returns on your capital in the way you are comfortable with, right? You don't need to justify anyone how you make returns. It's your money, it's your return. Do whatever you are good at, basically, right? Whatever you can understand. So here we have intentionally taken few examples that, good investment candidates can even come from businesses which have performed very poor, right? It's not like only great businesses can become great investment here. So, if you would have, I don't know how many of you were actually looking at textiles, but if you would have been looking at textile industry, you would see that, even before COVID, approximately around third quarter of 2018, third quarter of FY20, basically, that is around December or September 2019, the spinning sub-segment of textiles, knitting spinners, Vardhman Textile, etc., they were operating at one of the lowest margins level in a decade. But the businesses were actually getting crushed, and this was before COVID. So this were not abnormal margins due to COVID, right? And in fact, in Vardhman, that continued till June or September. Look at the numbers here: 12%, -1%, 9%. Historically lowest margins. But the business is going through a very bad period. And how we can tell it were a decade low margins? कि 10 साल में यार इतना कम इन्होंने कभी कमाया ही नहीं है. Look at the yearly OPMs also. We have taken those numbers from Skinner directly. You can calculate it from annual report too. ज़्यादा फर्क नहीं आएगा. Look at one of the worst margins that this company made has been around 10-11% in I think almost last 10-11 years. And in March 2020, this is the number that I was talking about, Q2 and Q3 of FY20, right? This company came down again to that level of 11-12%. That is the rock bottom margin level. You can even pick good businesses during this duration, right? That they are going through a very bad phase. They have, hit their decadal low in terms of sales growth or margin levels. They might turn out to be a good turnaround candidate, right? It's okay. It's okay if you understand that. Why will they, turn around? That's okay. Similarly, look at Vardhman. Look at Vardhman numbers right here. Look at the margins every year. for the last 10, 11 years. 13, 14% historically has been one of the trough for this company, right? Again, this number was hit in, March 2020. It continued even in FY21 for Vardhman. Even this period is a good period to pick up those companies. I don't want to show you stock charts because you know where I would be going towards. They have increased phenomenally well in the coming year. Well, what has not due to COVID, but this were genuinely a decent pick due to worst period. And you know why though these were even more better? Because over a period of time, such companies have moved into value-added products. Earlier, they used to just spin cotton, which is a very low margin business. Then they went into selling yarn, a bit higher margin. Then from yarn se fabric, which is one of the highest margin business in that textile value chain. Even after generating revenue from high margin businesses, the overall margin of the companies were equal to or lower than the margins they were making by just selling commodity, by just doing commodity business that was spinning. So actually the hit on margins were more. It's not like 13% ka 13% mein aa gaya. It was 13% in FY12 also. In FY 2021 it was again at 13. Boss, this revenue 6140, out of this a lot of revenue was generated actually from a business which is much higher than 13%. That is value added product. And in 2010 almost every revenue was generated by lower margin businesses. So thoda value add में जाने के बाद भी अगर return टूट रहा है आपका overall, that is actually called a very bad period. So that was something. The same scenario is happening with US focused pharma companies today. That's why you would see some companies which have both domestic pharma and export pharma business, right? They are demerging their US pharma business क्योंकि वो lower margin business अभी हो गए हैं, to come up with an IPO to get decent valuation. Case in point being Emcure Pharma. Nothing right or wrong in that, just stating a phenomena that is going on. You can see similar activity of decadal low being hit in Bharti Airtel, right? A telecom provider. So if we look at Bharti's number, see here Bharti's number. We have intentionally taken only standalone numbers in Bharti to focus on only the domestic telecom market, because you will understand 2018-19 के अंदर Jio आने लगा, why the numbers got ruined, and latest the industry has consolidated. Only two players have majorly are playing the industry. Vodafone is still struggling. Margins have improved. You will be able to relate to the story. So look at Bharti's number from FY12, FY10 till FY19. Look at the sales growth every year. Although low, but they were consistent into positive territory. See what happened in 18 and 19. -13, -8, rock bottom of a business. And India is still being, the data story, the growth story, the mobile penetration story. Rock bottom, sales growth, negative actually. And look at the OPM, a company which consistently used to make, 35, 33, 34, 35, 37, 38% kind of operating profit margins, went to below 30 for the first time in decade. Now, after March 2019, I have taken quarterly numbers to show you quarterly improvement, and again, standalone numbers. Look at from March 2019, what has been the trajectory of margin of Bharti Airtel. So the margins were actually at 26% for March 2019 quarter 4 of FY19. And look at from their margin, 26, 34, 35, 38, 40, 41, 42, 44, 47, 49, 50, upward trajectory. You could have picked Bharti in 2019. I know I have no right to speak this because this is complete hindsight bias. I'm not talking about I picked Bharti or I would have loved to pick Bharti. I'm just putting a case study in front of you that, in fact, sometimes businesses which have performed very poorly, and by poorly, I mean one of the most bad performance, even in a decade, in terms of revenue growth or margin levels, even those can turn out to be a good, business or portfolio candidates. It's not just it's not just that you should only buy quality. That's my main point here. So I think this was the theme for video 1. I hope you would have learned the definition of what is called a good business. And again, like we would have added to your learnings and your mindset through this video. Now, this was video number 1 of business analysis. In the coming week, we'll be coming up with video number 2. Stay tuned. And also, please do watch our remaining series. That is, remaining series, we do a lot of good stuff on around financial analysis, valuations. We also post on YouTube majorly, so please follow our channel. You can go to our website and regularly read our forum. We post a lot of good content, not just on financial analysis, business analysis, or valuations. We post a good content around, current awareness articles. We do that. All the recent stuff we put on our website. We put a lot of summaries of investor memos, investing webinars, research paper. Because we read a lot of blogs ourselves for our own development, we have shortlisted, best blogs in finance under various categories, in fact, under this section called top blogs in finance. So you want to read around cost of capital, you want to read around behavioral psychology, you want to read around asset allocation, you want to read around why technicals are important for fundamental investors, analyzing industry specific blogs. We have segregated that completely on our website, so you can read that too. And we post lot of fun, short but excellent content on Instagram. You can go and follow our channel on Instagram. That goes by the handle Finacle Shah. And hope to see you soon in session number 2. Do subscribe our channel. Thank you.